All right, so we're live. So hey everybody, and welcome to the last panel of MAYDAYCON 2020. It feels like it's been a long day, but it really hasn't. I mean, it's 14 hours is pretty long, but it hasn't felt like it. It's been a wonderful day full of amazing authors, and we have another amazing set of authors on this panel. Again, lastly, I'm your moderator, David Walters of FanFight Addicts. And just a quick note, again, you can feel free to submit comments or questions if you have any, and we'll try to get to them. We might run this one a little bit longer since Jeremy is going to be our last reader, and he seems to have all the time in the world, so we may take this one into oblivion. We'll see. But just kind of beginning, let's go ahead and have everybody introduce themselves. So we'll start with Mr. Martell. And then I'm pretty sure I pointed the wrong way. And then we'll go to Jeremy, go down to Devin, and across. So, Nick, why don't you take it away?
My name's Nick. I wrote a book called The Kingdom of Liars. I feel like I apologize for my main character like every other day. So that's really all I can say about it.
You sound so enthusiastic.
Look, I'm a little tired. But
everybody buy my book and read it.
Please buy my book.
He's in the middle of surviving.
I am in the middle of surviving. My debut came out 7 days ago, so this is full debut mode where I feel like I'm too much online. But
I got you, Jeremy.
All right, my name's Jeremy Szal, not Szal, as some people have been taking to calling me, including George R. R. Martin for some reason. Yeah, so I write about space. I write about brothers, aliens, and aliens getting high in space. I'm really excited. My book Stormblood comes out in 19 days in Galance.
Not counting or anything.
19 days. So yeah, which I'm not nervous about at all. And yeah, and please buy it. Please buy everyone else's book. And while you're at it, and I'm really excited to be here right now. I'm Australian, so I'm having a good Australian breakfast right about now at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my God, I thought you were joking about that.
He doesn't joke about anything.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to slagging off on Nick's book while I'm
absolutely.
Oh God!
Absolutely. All right, Devin.
Okay, I am Devin Madson. I started out in self-publishing and was picked up by Orbit last year. And my trad debut, Rewrite the Storm, I actually even have the fancy book, is coming out on the 23rd of June.
That way, right there. This whole camera's got me backwards. I've been doing this for 13 hours and I still can't figure out which way to go.
Yeah.
All right, Scotty.
My name's Scott Drakeford. I've got a book / trilogy coming out from Tor next year. All I've got is this super fancy bound manuscript as of right now. But yeah, that'll be called Rise of Mages, I think.
You sound super confident.
Yeah. Well,
I hope that's what I think is in the title.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Parentheses and everything.
Yeah,
and Sam? She might be having some technical difficulties. Sam, you there?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. I'm slightly ahead in the debut process compared to the...
Oh, we lost her.
Oh,
bad connection. Oh, bless it.
Oh no.
We'll get her back in. Like I said, Jeremy, I'm just gonna go ahead and speak for you. You don't care how long we go, so we'll get Sam back in. Since you're reading next. So we'll kind of start. Start with a happy topic. Why not? Happy stuff, right? So you have a contract to publish a novel. How do you celebrate?
Are you talking to me? Oh,
anybody?
Okay, sorry.
This is open discussion now.
Okay, you said my name, so I thought you were talking to me. Sorry, someone else. Someone else. That's not me. Talk.
I'll talk. I think you have to. I don't think it's like one big celebration. I think it's a lot of small little celebrations. Because the publishing process is very long, so you got to like celebrate as it like. I got cupcakes the day my book came out in the UK. And when I got my contract, my girlfriend bought me a book. There's little things you do, you can make it better, but I don't know about big celebration. and that's not as happy as it should have been. But
I mean, I can imagine that this whole pandemic has, somewhat hurt that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Be at, yeah, right.
Oh, you'll stand back.
My internet is. I was about to say rude word. Am I allowed to say rude word?
Yeah, how about it?
My internet is shut. Okay.
I can't remember how many times the F word was used during Peter v. Brett and Mike Cole's panel, especially with how many times Elena was alluding to how many words she writes in a couple of hours.
Wait, the F word? Don't you mean fish?
Yeah, fish. Yeah, Frank. Fiddlesticks.
Well, look, my internet is fish and Frank, so I've connected it to my phone. And yeah, sorry. I'm Sam. I wrote a book called City of Lies, which looks like this in the US and like this in the UK. And they came out in the year before last. And the sequel, Hello Empire, is due out in December. Anyway, sorry about my connection problem.
Oh, you're completely fine. So anybody want to follow up Nick's depressing answer?
He's really right, though. It's a lot of tiny things because, the first time that you get any hint that anything's going to happen, you can't even talk about it. So, you're kind of just celebrating on your own, I guess, or yelling at a couple of really close friends or family or something. And it's all tiny steps, at that time you get for me, it was, Orbit getting in contact with me. But for most people, it's like, I have an agent or someone wants a full manuscript. That's a celebration, an agent wants to represent you. That's a celebration. It's so it's lots of tiny steps, I guess. And because you can't talk about any of them as you go, when they actually happen, by the time they're knowledge, you can't really, you don't feel the same anymore.
Yeah, definitely don't celebrate by quitting your day job, right?
Yeah, don't do that.
I think I got an agent in 2015. I think I got a book deal in 2017, and Tor's like, "Hey, yeah, we want to publish all three of your books together." So I got a contract for a trilogy, right? And they want to publish them together, which is really cool, especially for people that have written all three books, but I hadn't and still am not done. So yeah, it can be a long road for sure. So don't go too nuts right at first.
So are they kind of doing like they did with Sarah Kozlov? Are they going to release yours in the same? Okay, because they released hers one after another in a 4-month succession. So they're going to do that with your trilogy. Or that's the plan?
That's the plan, yeah. I doubt it'll be...
Everything's up in the air, huh?
Yeah, I doubt it'll be that quick, but yeah, that's the general idea, yeah. And I'm pretty stoked for that when that day comes next year.
That's really interesting. I assumed that they did that because the books were already done and they wanted to take advantage of the fact that the writer had already done them. I didn't realize they did it to people who hadn't finished the trilogy.
Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe they just wanted to make sure I could write it. I don't know.
But they stuck the fork in too early, huh?
Yeah,
weren't quite done. What about you, Sam? Oh, sorry. I guess I have to pose the question again. So you've got a contract to publish your first novel. How do you celebrate, or do you?
Oh, I took my whole family out to dinner. My immediate family and my extended family, and bought them all a steak. It was very exciting. You have to, like Deb was saying, you have to sort of celebrate the milestones as they happen, because otherwise the whole industry can be pretty depressing. So yeah, I'm a very firm believer in getting excited when you can, because those times might be few and far between. If you got to keep yourself going.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I know, with some of you, I've kind of seen through the process of getting, I guess, a contract with a publisher and being very hush-hush about it. And then the announcement comes, say, a couple of months later. And then a couple of months later, then you maybe have a cover reveal. And then a few months later, the arcs kind of start rolling out. So I guess, yeah, it's just a bunch of mini woo moments. And then, you just have to wait until it's finally published. And I mean, in that time you start getting, say your author blurbs and stuff like that. But I mean, kind of in the same realm, I mean, is it even possible to celebrate? And Scott can probably answer this question first. Is it really possible to celebrate knowing there's a lot of work forthcoming?
I mean, yeah, it is, right? Like, I still remember the day I got an email from my agent saying he wanted to represent it, right? And that was like 5 years ago, but I still have a real good memory of when that came, and I was super stoked then, and I was super stoked when I got the tour deal, and I'm still super stoked right now, right? Like, would I like to have some books on the shelf? Yes. Would I? Yeah. Well, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's all ups and downs, right? They're definitely down. Oh, there goes Sam again. There are definitely some downs.
It's like
but,
ghosting us. Sorry, Scott. Go
Australian
ahead.
internet.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Anyway, there are definitely some downs, but I think there are a lot of things to celebrate in the process. You know, no matter what your path is, I think there's always something good, and I think it's important to take stock of that and treat it for what it is.
Who else wants to follow that up?
I can, I guess. Yeah, I did like Sam. I took my whole family out to dinner when I got the book deal. And I took my family out when I got my agent as well. And yeah, it is important to celebrate the moments as they happen, because you're not sure when they'll come again. You're not sure, if you're going to be able to have that same amount of joy. I mean, getting a book deal is amazing, and getting that email, this is going to happen. Someone is going to represent you. You're going to have this editor. You're going to have this cover. That's all great. But then, you realize, oh, I've got to do this for a living now. Oh, I've got to write the next book. Oh, I've got to, do this event. And it becomes a little bit perfunctory, like not too much. It's still cool to be doing this, but it's just, that's your way of life now. And so, have to remember, as you head into it for the first time, it's your first time for everything. And you've got to make sure you celebrate it, because, if you're not overjoyed at the prospect of having your book, who else is going to be, besides your family? You're your first fan after all. I mean, or at least you should be. I mean, so, you've got to celebrate, the good times.
Is your mom not your first fan?
Other than her.
But I say your mom's going to go out and buy as many copies as she can. I mean, come on.
Oh, for sure she is. Her critique of it was, when I first gave it to her, was, oh, it's very spacey. It's very spacey. She's an English teacher at university level, so I'm not sure. So I hope that was not her best response. So
you should have put that as a blurb. Mom says very spacey.
My mom likes Sam's book better.
I love Jeff. Jeff's mom is the best.
Mine has too much blood. Sam's was better.
My mom is actually an incredible salesperson. She will bring up my book in the most ridiculous, shamefaced way. She has absolutely no hesitation in, like, she'll text me. They went on this holiday probably a few months after the book came out, and my parents were driving around, saying various places, and I get texts from mum saying, I just told the guy at the petrol station to buy a book, and he said he would buy it for his daughter. How do you do this? She doesn't feel even a little bit embarrassed about it, which is awesome, because I would never be able to bring up a book to a guy at a petrol station. So, these people advocating for it.
I mean, that's what you want, right? You want someone, basically a PR person who's, talks about your work nonstop. And you don't have to pay them. That's the best thing, Yeah, my mom doesn't do that, but my dad sure does. And he did it to some. I told him, we were doing a job somewhere. I work on a construction site, and he told the guy next door about it. I'm like, Dad, please stop talking about it. But it turned out the guy he was talking to won an Oscar for the production design on Mad Max Fury Road. And suddenly he was telling all his mates about it as well. So I've got no idea where that's going to lead. But, you never know who your books end up on.
Go Dad.
Yeah, well, some people have the personality where they can talk about their own work really comfortably and happily, and some of us do not have that personality, so we need mums, basically.
Or Dad.
Or dads, yeah.
What about you, Nick?
I mean, my roommate has the personality. He doesn't read. Like, I can count on one hand how many books he's read, but he really likes talking about my book to anyone who will listen. So he's a great salesman, even though he hasn't read it himself. And my girl.
What happens is you tell him what to say, and then he goes and tells everybody.
See, you think that, but he goes off the script real quick. It's terrible. And my girlfriend's written like a 3-page essay of why she hates my main character with a passion of 1,000 burning suns. No, but
we're just not watching.
No, I to be like, actually, but like publishing is so like sitting in front of your computer, just writing for like months and weeks and days on end. I think there are a few moments that actually kind of break like kind of the monotony of publishing, where they're just like, you get so elated that like you kind of want to like lean more into them, if anything. Like getting my signing with my agent was one of them for me, and I was like, seeing the cover art is another big one. Holding it for the first time is a big one. Like there are a few moments that like literally like you think of, wow, all these like months of hard work toiling away in the darkness is worth it. They're really cool for like this one moment. And like for me, I like lean into those more when I get them to make, you know, everything else better. And that's, I think, all you can do, really. That's also a depressing answer. Kind of.
I mean, I will say I haven't found out where we're gonna find joyful answers out of any of the panelists so far yet. Kidding. Obviously, we're finding joy in moms being PR associates. So, but okay. So next, kind of loaded question: how stressful are deadlines? And some people may not want to answer this.
Wait, I'll answer this because my book's due in 2 days.
You're very happy and relaxed, Nick, for someone who's book's due in 2 days.
You weren't here for the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, like deadlines are terrifying and scary, to be blunt. Especially, and I can only speak for I think book 2. Is that there's that initial panic where I finished my first book, my agent really likes it, and my agent's very editorial. He like goes over everything before it even gets to my editors. So for me, submitting it to him was just like this moment of like, oh God, did I do it? Please say I like pulled it off, and I'm not just like a one-trick pony. And those deadlines never like that. The closer it gets to the deadline, I feel like the more panic and worry I got, where I was like, can I do this again? Can I do this again? And like the first time you're ready, he's like, yeah, this is good. I'm like, oh, thank you. It kind of makes the deadlines a little bit easier, but even then, like it's terrifying. Deadlines are never easy. And that's like I said, mine's in 2 days. And I'm like, I'm not going to sleep in like probably like 12 hours. So it's great. Wonderful, wonderful time. Maybe I should stop answering questions.
I see why you're so like depressing. Anybody else wanna?
Well, I've got a deadline.
I think they're all going to be depressing.
Yeah, well, my deadline, is a few weeks after book 1 launches, so that's kind of fun. And at the moment, it's sitting at 200,000 words, and it needs to be 180,000 words. And I have not edited any of it at all, except for maybe the first 100 pages of 700 pages. So the next month of my life is obviously going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, and never mind that whole chunks of it need to be completely cut out and rewritten. So it's just the thing about deadlines is that when you're working on book 1, you've got all the time in the world because you don't have to deliver. You don't have anyone that you owe it to. You're on your own schedule. But as soon as the contract comes in and the money comes in, I'm a writer now. I've got to write. And it's not just a matter of, rocking up and writing what you want to write. Like, you've got to keep a schedule and you've got to deliver. And especially if you've sold the book on a synopsis, there's this temptation to, go along with what you've said you're going to write. So the pressure's a lot more on. So it can feel a lot more, mechanical to write a second book. But at the same time, I think you've really got to go with your gut and, if you say to your editor, okay, this is a lot to take on, I'd like a month, or I would like a few extra weeks to really nail this. I don't think any reasonable editor is going to say, no, you can't. You're bad author. You've got to deliver now. But you also have to make sure that you're having fun, I guess, and writing the stuff that you want to write about, because otherwise, what's the point? And or maybe that's just me trying to be hopelessly naive as the deadlines come crashing in and my editor comes hacking at the door with an axe. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
It makes you feel better. Jillian will come with a bow and arrow, not an axe.
Well, considering who Jillian's father-in-law is, she has plenty of experience popping down doors with axes. Yeah, Johnny. So,
Yeah, I have a deadline in 4 weeks too. So, this seems to be like a bit of a theme we have going on here. That's for book 3. But I had a bit of a baptism of fire with mine. So I don't find that the deadlines are quite as scary as they used to be. Because when Orbit bought my books, they also bought the 3 books of my original trilogy. And I had to edit those back to back in the second half of last year. While I was also editing Storm at the same time. So I had like deadlines that piled on top of each other. I had a structural edit at the same time that I had a copy edit, and I had to fit both of them into a 3-week period because that was how tight our deadlines were. I had a 3-day line edit in which I rewrote 5 chapters. So
That makes the rest of us look terrible.
Yeah.
And here I was thinking that Devin had the easiest time going from self-pub to traditional.
God, I hope my editor's not watching this.
Yeah, hard same.
I had no choice but to be like, all right, I'm just going to do this. I literally sat at my computer for 16 hours a day, didn't do anything else. My partner did everything. He was an absolute gem. But yeah, so it means that whenever I have these deadlines that are just one thing, so, I just have to get book 3 in, and then the copy edits of book 2 come 2 days later. I'm like, yes, 2 days off, and they're not stacking and overlapping. So yeah, deadlines, I don't know. They really suck, but I just don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
I think I have a really uneasy relationship with deadlines because there's a part of present Sam who always assumes that based on the fact that I've had to do a lot of last minute horrendous things in school and at work and as well as in writing over time. There's some part of present Sam that always thinks future Sam thrives on pressure. She'll pull it off. That will be fine. Forgetting that, when you're actually living it, it's a horrible, horrible nightmare. I've had a few sort of dramas trying to get deadlines done. Most recently, trying to get the draft of my second book in when my editor wanted to change the outline kind of 6 weeks before the deadline. So I had a very horrible 6 weeks in which I wrote an obscene amount of words. And Tasha Suri told me this trick, which when she had to write a lot of words in a weekend, she just played the same song over and over again continuously. And I thought, that sounds nuts. So the last couple of days before my deadline, I had this nutty, like, pet music from one of Amazon's mixes, and I just had that running on continuous loop on for, like, I didn't sleep at all the night before it was due. So I wrote for like 36 hours straight or some insane amount of time. Anyway, so deadlines are terrible, and if you can avoid doing that, that would be my advice. Yeah, don't try to write 80,000 words in 5 weeks. 4 weeks.
I think we're all gluttons for punishment because all of our books, as far as I know, are at least 150,000 words, if not more. I'm pretty sure at least Sam's like, because Sam's City of Liars is like what, 185K? So
yes.
Yeah, so
yes, Hollow Empire is currently well north of 200.
Yeah, exactly. Gluttons for punishment.
Yeah.
We do this to ourselves. We can't complain.
I know. I dream of writing these 100,000 word books that other people talk about. 100 is so big and tiny. I would love it.
Why can't you guys raise this distinct story?
I never set out to write books that long. Not ever.
Yeah.
I always think, oh yeah.
I can't imagine that
would
you
be great.
do. Yeah, I can't
No.
imagine that you just set out. You're like, I'm gonna write 100,000 words, and then like, there's no way I can get this entire story done in that. And you're like, well, I could make it into like, certain sequels, but at some point you're like, I want to get everything out in this one to get to a certain point, so I can get to the next one. But before we move on, I have to know, because everybody's had a different answer so far. I need to know, Scott, what are your thoughts on deadlines?
Staying quiet for a reason. No, I have a deadline in 11 days. I have kind of a hot and cold relationship with it, like Sam and some of the others. So I have a 5-year-old girl. 5-year-old girls are fantastic. Like, she's my favorite thing in the whole wide world. But she has my attention span, and so every 5 minutes, it's, hey Dad, and her favorite thing to say is, hey Dad, will you come keep me some company? And how do you say no to that? And I know, right? And she's adorable. I wish I had a picture or her, but I sent her upstairs with my wife. But it's so hard because you always, or at least I do, I inevitably put everything off until it's absolutely critical, because stuff happens, especially now with all this quarantine shit and just the stuff that happens in real life when you have jobs, you have families, whatever it is. But at the same time, deadlines get me going, right? Like, I'm so much more productive in the 1, 2, 3 months before a deadline than I am any other time, because up until that point, I feel like, oh yeah, I'm doing work. I'm outlining and I'm thinking about it. And
thinking really hard.
Yeah. I'm living in my world. And it's all great until right now, when I've got a book due in 11 days and a lot of writing to do. So.
But importantly, future Scott thrives on that pressure, right?
Oh, future Scott is the best at that.
I wish we could all be future Scott.
If he's alive, he's a great guy. Yeah.
It's all fuel for your writing. So, that's every single glass of beer I drink and every single episode of BoJack Horseman or Ozark that I watch. I'm just doing it to enhance my writing. I'm doing it to nurture my work. So every single episode and every glass of beer, I'm doing it for you, readers. I'm doing it for you, and I want you to know that.
Paul Kruger said something similar in the last panel. He said all the ice cream he eats and all the anime he watches is for the reader.
Yeah, fair enough.
Kind of staying with that topic, how lenient are, I guess, your editors or publishers with extending deadlines? I'm assuming they don't like it, but how lenient are they on it? Like, if it's, I guess it's different if it's a debut versus a sequel, or if it's your second series or whatever. But I would imagine the first couple of books are like, no, you're gonna finish this now.
Now, I can answer this because my book was delayed 4 months. It was originally supposed to come out in February 20, but because the US were running a little bit late and our edits were running late, we decided to delay it. And we thought, give the extra time will give us more time to go to the US. And then a pandemic happened, and the US just, collapsed. The publishing kind of collapsed in on itself in some ways. And so the US book deal didn't happen. And we're releasing in 18 days, and we still don't have a US deal, and so we delayed it for nothing. So yay! But because of that, the one advantage was the deadline for book 2 was supposed to be in January. So I basically got a 6-month deadline extension because as a result of that delay, which is a great thing, because if I didn't have that come January, I would have been screwed 9 ways from Sunday. So I am very grateful for that. So it kind of worked out in the end. But no, like I think I said a little bit earlier, like I talked to them all, but I talked to Jillian and my editor and John, my agent, and they were both very much of the mind, like, well, if you need extra time, do it. If you we send you the edit letter and you're like, okay, this is a lot to take on. I'd like a few weeks, or I'd like, some time to process this, then absolutely take that. But it's just about communication. I mean, if you just dumped it on, 2 months late on the desk, I don't think they'd be really, happy about that. But it's always a conversation. Just like editorial is a conversation, I mean, you get the impression, you go on some places that I'm not going to name Reddit, that publishing, is basically a one-sided, higher up monarchy of, editors and that sort of thing that feed off the lifeblood of authors' dreams, that you must do this, you must do that, you've got to deliver, we're going to take your baby away and give it a new name and a new hairstyle. And reprogram it like something out of an AI movie. But in reality, it is very much a conversation, and being able to talk with them one-on-one and say, I would like this extra time, I would like to be able to do this way, would you be willing to give me that extra leave to really make the story work? Then sure, they'll go along with it. Yeah,
I think we do some of that fear to ourselves, though. I think authors are usually, fairly introverted, stressed humans, and the whole but if I ask for a deadline or like anything in particular, then you are going to be the annoying diva, or the your editor's least favorite author. Oh, maybe they'll drop you for being irritating. Like all those silly little kind of paranoid fears. I think a lot of that is just I think we do that to ourselves more than publishing does, and then it kind of gets a bit perpetuated by people who don't know what it's really like on the inside. As for deadlines, I've only asked for the one extension for this one. So it used to be due on the 1st of June. And just with everything that has been going on, because, I have the 4-year-old child at home. So I know that pain. It's just not, I just wrote to my editor a couple of weeks back and I said, look, I could get it to you. I could. It won't be as good. So if there is any leeway, can I please have some? And she gave me the extra 2 weeks and just said, is this going to be okay? Do you think that will be enough? I assume if I'd said that it wasn't, given that my books are coming out 6 monthly, they might have then considered shifting the release date or something. But 2 weeks was fine for me. But it was a really easy, I was kind of a bit stressed about asking because I hadn't done so before. But I think because I'd proved that I could hit really stupidly ridiculous deadlines before, I felt a little bit more confident saying, hey, can I have a teensy bit more time? And it was really easy and really cool. So I think it's all right.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you don't really get any visibility of this when you're not actually in the industry is the kind of production schedule and where everything falls and whether and how there's any flexibility in that. So, you might, and now that publishers are starting to do different kinds of release schedules, so it's not so much a one book a year process and they're experimenting with more regular releases a lot more often. Usually there's a period of time in which they want you to have your book done, but they do build in some buffer. So if something goes wrong and it takes longer, you've got more time without screwing everything up for everybody else. But I think it's something that a lot of the time authors don't necessarily know what all of those critical dates are, and that can kind of contribute to that feeling of, oh God, I can't ask for any extra time because I'll screw everything up and my editor will hate me. And it's just like Dave said, most of it you're doing to yourself, but also it's partly a product of the industry being a bit opaque. And a lot of the times I think that editors don't necessarily know how little we know about these things. So sometimes they assume that that the world's not going to end if something gets moved around, but you feel like it's going to end. I mean, I'm in a weird position because obviously my book got bumped by like a year and a half from when it was supposed to be out. So that was less a question of kind of asking for more time and more like my editor wanted a different book. So yeah.
But it's going to be an amazing book, Sam.
I hope so. After all this time, I really hope so, David.
This feels like
Well, I've
almost
read it.
like
It's
group
brilliant.
therapy for me. Like, like hearing everybody else, it's like my book was my first book was supposed to publish in September of this year originally, and it's now been pushed. Last I heard, at least till May of 2021, and it's mostly just because we moved across the country for my wife's new job and some other things, so it had to happen. But yeah, my experience with my one editor, at least, and my agent is, man, they're so nice. Like they're so understanding. They know what's going on. I think the stress is because of what Sam said, right? It's or is she on this side? Yeah, she's on that side. The industry is a little bit opaque, right? And I don't know when pushing a date is like, oh yeah, that's cutting into my planned slush time or whatever, or if I'm like really screwing her over and my editor has to go find do days and days of work and find a new slot for me and shuffle stuff around. I don't know, and so I always assume the worst because I've been a project manager on a lot of projects where somebody doesn't deliver and it causes me a lot of stress. So I kind of internalize that on her behalf. She probably wishes I internalized it a little more. But I mean, for the most part, I think the publishing industry is full of really, really good humans. I've been really impressed with them so far.
Ended on a happy note.
Oh wait, do you want me to end on a maybe happy note?
Happy place. Don't spoil it, Nick. He's in his happy place.
It's a happy place, but it may not make people happy at me. I guess I'll just explain. My book was meant to be published in September 2019, and for a lot of reasons, it got bumped all the way to March 2020. And in that time, I had already submitted my second book. So my book kind of just sat in limbo for multiple months where I was like, is it being edited? Is it not being edited? Do I have a deadline anymore? And then when they sent it back to me for edits, it didn't come with a deadline. It just came with here's your edits back. And I was like, I was talking to my agent. I'm like, is this book just whenever I want to return it? And he was like, I don't know. We'll figure this out later. Work on it until someone says different.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was literally me being like, is this due? And it was like, we don't have a release date for book 2 yet. I don't know. And then 2 weeks later, 2 weeks ago, my editor contacts me and be like, hey, how's book 2 going? And I'm like, when was it due? And he's like, I don't know, 2 weeks. And I'm like, all right, 2 weeks. But it really is once you know how you're in the production schedule, you can figure out how much deadline you can ask. For copy edits or page proofs, you can't ask for extensions on those. But especially when you're beginning, you're like, oh, we know we're this many months away. I can probably ask for another few weeks to get this done. But everyone's the same. I've had wonderful times. If I ever need more time, my editor even said when he's like, hey, it can be due in 2 weeks. If you need more time because what's going on, take it. I'll give you the time. And that was me without even asking for it. Everyone in publishing, I think, is very good with being like, hey, take the time you need to make the book well. This is when we'd like it as. And I'm almost confident they have one date they ask for it, and there's one date they actually need it by. Yeah.
Classic.
Which honestly,
I know what we're like.
Yeah, exactly. They know what we're all like. They've been working in publishing. They know the first deadline is wishy-washy, and we all go from there. But yeah, it's everyone in publishing is really nice with giving us the time. At least what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for you five.
Yeah.
It could be horrible for some other people.
It's really good to know. I mean, I was talking to my editor last year, and I was talking to her about getting blurbs, you know, what sort of promotion we're going to do, what sort of marketing we're going to do, how we're going to reach out, get more readers. And she said to me, you know, look, what moves the needle along is making the best book you possibly can. That's what gets into the most readers. That's what gets the most readership. That's what gets people talking, delivering the best product you possibly can. So, you know, if you need a few extra weeks to make that product good, you know, like Devin was saying, you know, I can do it, but it won't be as good if I don't do it in a few weeks. Then sure, your editor is going to say, you know, we'll take that few weeks. I mean, obviously circumstances are different with copy edits. It's not as flexible. And, but you know, if you need that time to make it good, then sure, they'll give it to you.
I'm gonna add one thing in real quick, just because even I said it. I actually know an author who actually changed a lot of their ending in page proofs, and their editor actually gave them the time and like resources to do it, just because they had because they were like, this is gonna make a better book. Like editors really want to put the best book out there, and they'll do whatever they can to do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to end it on there actually are exceptions to the rule. Even I said.
All right, so next, I guess you can call it a question. It's kind of a statement. But so your book is ready to be published. The worries are over, right? Right? It's all happy stuff now, right?
Yeah, totally. 100% happy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Straight face.
Oh, smooth sailing from that point.
I mean, my stresses, my stresses might be a little bit different, right? Because it sounds like all of you have books that kind of go into the production cycle, and then you're on to book 2 or 3 or whatever, and move along the production cycle. So having a trilogy sold and writing a trilogy all as one is a blessing and a curse, because I'm able to kind of craft it all as one and write it all as one and go back and change stuff. But I go back and change stuff like a lot, right? And like I can't. I've probably had, since I had the final version into my editor, I've probably had like 5-6 different times that I've compiled a little list as I'm writing other books 2 and 3, that I say, oh, okay, well, shit, this needs to change in book 1, and it's like a whole list of stuff that I have to go back and find. You know, so they're going to have different answers probably, but for me, I almost feel like until my editor pries all 3 books away from me, I'm never done, and I'm just always stressed about all of them.
Yep.
Yep.
Anybody else?
There's no way to ever be done with these things. I picked up City to do a reading, like, I don't know, a couple of months after it came out, and opened it up, and there's a mistake in like the 2nd page or something. And it's like, how, with the number of people who read these things, like, how do you manage to go through and be like, that guild doesn't exist? Sorry, why did you mention it on page 2? Anyway, you can just fiddle forever is the thing with these things. The longer the time that you have available, the more you can still be, like, I'm doing copy edits right now of this book, and I'm trying to think through as much cutting as I can because the book is so long. And yeah, like, if you leave it with me, I'll just keep doing that forever. So yeah, once they've got to pry it off your hands eventually, and then you've got to just accept that that's the book.
That's it. Yeah, see, that's like Christopher Rocchio did a reading earlier for his book coming out in July called Demon in White. It's the 3rd book in his Sun Eater trilogy, or I guess it's series. He did say he was going to try to write 5 books, so we'll say series. But during his reading, he caught mistakes that have to go get corrected now, and his book comes out in 2 months. so I mean, there's always going to be something. I mean, I've read many, a published novel, whether indie or trade. You know, granted, indie, you're always going to probably find mistakes because a lot of people don't get, their books edited when they're indie publishing. But there have been several, traditionally published novels that I'll find grammatical errors or mispunctuation and stuff like that. And unfortunately, it bothers me when I find it, because I used to do beta reading and gamer reading and stuff for indie authors. This is back before I really started getting in the review game. And so every book I read now, granted, arcs don't bother me as much because I'm expecting it, but it drives me absolutely up the wall. And early on, I started messaging authors. I was like, hey, just FYI, on this page, this is not a word. and the people are like, well, it's already, hardcover, paperback, everything. And I go, I mean, you could change the ebook, maybe. I mean, a couple of other people may still buy it. So, I can't imagine it's ever done. I mean, you publish a book and then it's on to the next book, but I guess your job on the first one or the next one or whatever is never complete, because you'll still get, I guess, a few things later on in the years, or you'll still have people griping about certain things in your book for years to come. I'm sure none of you have ever had that, right?
Yeah, no one complains about my book at all.
Nobody's ever complained about one certain thing in any book, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's just unicorns and rainbows when it comes to talking about books.
Honestly, people must seriously have a hobby with going through and finding errors, because with every single book, without fail, you will get someone on Goodreads complaining about some minor inconsistency or whatever, and you're like, how on hell did you find it out of the whole book? Like, you've been going with a magnifying glass to find this. Like,
look, I think this is one of those things where when you're not in the industry, it seems like, how can there possibly be errors? Like, it just seems like carelessness. You work in your day job and you prepare a document of some kind. You wouldn't expect to be putting, like, I'm a lawyer in my day job, and I would never be sending an advice to a client that has spelling mistake in it. And so it feels like, I think when I was a reader, when I was much younger, if I found errors in books, and I did because I was a really pedantic reader, I would be like, oh, this is, someone was so careless. And you have that kind of attitude because you think that it's a reflection of carelessness. And you don't realize that it's just inevitable with big documents, that sometimes errors creep in. They creep into manuscripts by incredibly big, famous authors. And it's not a matter of people being careless. Like, the author's read it a million times. They've got readers who are reading it. They've got the editors reading it, and the copy editors read it. And there's usually, other people who come in from the publisher who read it at a late stage and just try to pick things up. Errors just happen anyway, and I think it's something that you don't really know until you're in the industry. You don't know how common that is. So I sympathise with readers who see errors and think that it's not me, because in a way it is. But yeah, it's just something. It's something you just have to deal with. There's like,
especially with Robin Hobbs that write such big
final
books.
book. There's like a mistake in the name of a character that appeared in one of the print versions of it, and they didn't even know where it came from. Like, it was not in the file when it got sent to typesetting, and it just appeared. And it's just one of these things that just happens. They happen. I don't know how it happens, but it does.
Somebody at the printer was like, let's screw this one thing up.
It doesn't even seem possible that this happens, but yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, I can. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was to say, if it makes you feel any better, when I was first getting my proofs, I think, I was looking through it, and I'm like, oh, the word count changed. Maybe Jillian, she cut more than I thought. Then I looked at it more closely again. Chapter 4, the whole of chapter 4 was missing. The whole of the chapter was completely gone. Do we want to fix this before it goes to printer, please? They're like, oh, I don't know how that happened. I'm like, well, how did it happen? It didn't happen on my end. It couldn't have happened on my end. Like, I sent it in. So what did you did this? But they were like, yeah, it happens. Like my agent actually told me that something similar had happened to one of the Wheel of Time books. Like, printed copies had actually been come out, and there was
absolutely
missing. So
there's actually the print version of the ARC that came out for my book in the UK and Australia and New Zealand. There was a mistake at the printers, and the dedication and acknowledgement section of the ARC got accidentally switched with the dedication and acknowledgement section of a different author's book. So we have two books coming out. I think they both had city in the title, but that was the only resemblance. One was a crime novel and one was mine. And they printed the ARCs, and so my acknowledgements and dedication are in somebody else's book and vice versa. And hilariously, the dedication in my book that got printed in the ARC is for Sam. So it looks like I dedicated myself. I think it's amazing.
That's it. And I'm doing that.
So much amusement. So
Everyone
whenever
go
I
home.
see
We can't top that. We can't top that. Everyone go home.
the acknowledgement, Steve, the author, was thanking someone who was like a wasp expert. There must have been insects in their book for some reason. And she was like, oh, thanks to Wasp Woman on Twitter or whatever. So I call those arcs the special wasp edition. And if anyone ever produces one for me, I will draw a wasp and sign it and underline the for Sam and explain how, I put the work in, so the book is for me. You've got to make the best of it.
I just want to thank myself for finally finishing this novel
Yeah.
and getting it published. Nobody helped me in this journey.
I hope that WASP is the insect type and not the acronym, which stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Let's hope that it was the insect
It was
type.
definitely the insect.
Okay, good.
Definitely the insect. I think it was like there must have been like a wasp involved in one of the crimes in the novel or something.
Hopefully.
By wasp.
That's really interesting that they would like point that out in the acknowledgments. Like, thanks to my wasp experts. But now I really want an arc of your book that has that in there. I kind of feel like that's a keepsake.
Yeah, just look at the special collector's edition.
Yeah.
You worth something someday.
So I talked about, and I told you guys that I was going to roll over probably some stuff from earlier panels, but when it comes to sending your books out for blurbs and reviews, not for reviewers themselves, but for like, your Kirkus and your Publishers Weekly and stuff, do you guys like have any say in who reads them? Like, do you pick and choose? Like, and Devin, you may be able to, a little different since you came from indie to traditional. Did you have the opportunity to maybe pull some blurbs from some of the reviews you had gotten before you got the book deal, and then everybody else can kind of answer to their stuff?
I think, Orbit had already done that with some of the reviews that were there and some of the ones they had on like Amazon and stuff. When it comes to like when they send it out for blurbs, when I first got my contract, they sent me like a questionnaire, and it's got, you're asked to list like, all of the sort of people, I suppose, that you personally have a connection with that might be, good to send for blurbs, even if they're like librarians or journalists or anything. They just want to know, what kind of connections that you have. And then they use that as well as like their own lists and whatever. And I was sent like a draft list of people to send, that they would send blurb requests to. And my agent was allowed to have some input, and we took people off the list, we added people on the list, and obviously not all of those people ended up reading it for blurbs, but that was the people that they ended up contacting. So I had a bit of input in that, which was good and scary.
We loved it so much.
Yeah, and Sam had already read it and blurbed it. She was yeah. So it is really scary because then you know who it's being sent to. I think, it might have been nicer just to like get the blurbs as they came in and go, oh, such and such read it, without knowing all of the people that it was sent to who didn't end up reading it, or sitting there kind of nervous thinking, oh my God, this person that I really admire is gonna hate it. So I don't know, it's good enough.
Absolutely. Yeah, mine came like that as like a surprise thing. So I got the questionnaire as well when I first got the book, but like I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any like industry connections. I didn't even have like beta readers or anything. I just kind of entered the industry never having spoken to another person about writing other than like my sister and husband. So I kind of came in as a complete noob in many ways. With one notable exception, which was that I knew Robin Hobb. So she had volunteered to read my book and did so and blurbed it for me, which was incredibly awesome of her. But everybody else, I didn't know when it was going to go to them or who had been sent to or whatever. I would just occasionally get these emails popping in my inbox and be like, Kate Elliott said this about your book, and you'd be like, oh my God, but it would have been much worse if I'd known, like Dev, if I knew that she was reading it before I got the blurb, then I would have been awful. And I would have like assumed the worst. Like I know now, there's nothing malicious about not having time to read a book. Like authors get sent heaps of books and you don't have time. You've got a million other commitments, and it's totally fine. And you know that objectively. But if you know somebody you really admire and like is reading your book, and they don't produce a blurb, then you just assume that you're the worst person in the world and a terrible hack, and that they hate you and everything that you've ever written, etc. So it's much nicer when they just arrive without any forewarning.
I guess I'll go. So like I knew one person who had it. My editor actually was clear about it. I'm not going to tell you who I'm sending it to because the way he said it, he's like, look, you can be friends with people even if they don't like your book in the industry, and it's better not for you to worry about it. And he was very, very clear on that.
It's a very good, healthy attitude.
yeah, it's way healthier than I was. Like, I was like, oh, can I know? And he's like, no. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, absolutely not. I'm like, all right. And then he explained to me, and I understood. I only knew one person who had it because they actually had told me themselves they had it, and that was terrifying because I have a lot of respect for them as a writer. And knowing they had my book, being like, oh man, how many times I use curses in my book? Are they gonna hate it? Not a fun experience to have. But that was it. And I only knew one, and their blurb came in, and it was nice. It was very kind of like, oh shit, moment. And then all the blurbs that come in are just kind of like, oh shit, again. You hear someone you respect say nice things about your book, and you're like, oh wow, I'm not a complete hack. I thought I was. Right? But yeah, blurbing's weird. Like, I don't know. Once we're into, I need to stop being depressing. Once you get into publishing, you realize how weird blurbing is. It's a lot of like, some authors just don't have time for it. Some authors are very like strict on what they blurb and what they don't blurb, and everyone has their own take on what they do and what they don't do. So even if they like absolutely hate your book, which they probably don't, they just probably never read it, but it feels like they hated your book because they have blurred it. I need to stop being real. I need to go back to being happy. Sorry.
It's because you have a deadline coming up. That's why
exactly right. Yeah, I'm too realistic. I got a deadline in 2 days. I can't.
Why are you here?
Well, the people
You're very good at beating ourselves up.
Thank you.
What's up, Jeremy?
Skill.
Well, the people who blurbed my book, like I definitely didn't just lock them all in my basement, chain them all in my basement, and feed them scraps of meat until they would shower me with all the praise that I deserve, that my literary masterpiece deserves. I definitely didn't do that. You can ask Nick; he blurbed it, and I definitely didn't leave them chained up in the basement like that.
It was a nice trip to Australia, though. I gotta admit,
it was a nice basement. Yeah, I even gave you water. I mean, it was brown water, but still.
I'd never been to Australia before. It was a great time.
I mean, you didn't get to see much of it from the basement, though. No, but now it is nice to get really blurbs. I got the same thing. I got a questionnaire like, who would you like to send this book out to? And I'm like, this famous person, this person with this amount of coverage. And it's really nice that you get to send that, know that they would have had a copy of your book, but then the nerve-wracking thing starts. Are they reading it? Do they like it? Have they not said anything? And then you end up, scouring their Twitter and their Goodreads and their Amazon pages to see if they've liked it or are reading it or saying anything about it. And if they aren't, you get worried. And that definitely doesn't happen at all. And I definitely didn't do that. But no, it is, when the blurbs do come in, it is really nice. It's funny with me because I'm one of the, as a rarity on this whole convention, I'm a science fiction writer, not a fantasy writer. And 90% of our blurbs came from fantasy writers. And we were like, my editors were like, okay, this is good, but we would like a sci-fi author to blurb. And I'm like, yeah, but fantasy as well. Fantasy is good. And I'm like, yes, fantasy is good, but we want people in your genre to be talking about a book in that genre. So I'm like, okay, good. Anything's good, right? But then another blurb comes in. Oh, it's another fantasy author. Another blurb comes in. Oh, it's a horror writer this time. Still good, right? They're like, yeah, but we would like some science fiction writers. But so it's a bit of a weird process. But honestly, like any praise that you do get is nice, especially if you are a fan of their books as well. It is a bit of a weird process because you have absolutely no control over it whatsoever. You have control over your deadlines. You have control over what you write. But like a lot of things in publishing, you have zero control over who reads your book, whose name gets printed alongside it, and that sort of thing. And my editor actually told me that when, like, most authors don't actually start out with blurbs. So she said, Joe Abercrombie, Richard Morgan, Alistair Reynolds, all of them, like, they didn't start out with a single blurb on their books when they went to print. So even the fact that you have a print blurb at all is a good thing. So
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was surprised as well, because I just assumed everyone would be clamoring to read their books, but no, a lot of authors don't actually start out with blurbs. And as far as I know, all of us do have blurbs on our books, even before they came out. So that alone is a good thing.
Scott will get some.
Like chaining people up in basements,
got a couple.
Really good motivator. I found.
Yeah.
Yeah. After hearing you guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. No, saying torture is a good motivator. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say that after hearing all you guys go through your story, I'm glad that my editor is pretty secretive as well. She, under no circumstances, would give me the list of people that she sent it to. I said, okay, well, will you send it to these, maybe 3 or 4 people, really like them, and I've at least talked to them before. I didn't come into the industry with any connections, not even Robin Hobb. But yeah, she wouldn't even tell me if she was sending it to them. So I'm kind of scared to even ask anybody. Hey, did you get a copy of my book? I don't even know. It's a weird experience for sure.
So you just start DMing people on Twitter, but hey, did you happen to get a copy of a manuscript? If you did you like it?
I'll send you the ebook.
If you didn't, could you not tell anybody?
Yeah. Just burn it.
Yeah. Can you still be okay with me? You can just not like my writing, but I kind of look up to you a little bit. So as far as cover art goes, obviously you all have different publishers and probably different ways of how they do cover art, where that they just find somebody and they show it to you and you're like yay or nay, which you probably can't say nay. I'm sure a lot of publishers are no, this is going to be it. But do y'all ever have a hand in what the cover is going to look like?
Yeah, I had complete control over it. Basically, it was a conversation from step 1. They said, what would you like the style to be? What would you like, the color palette? What would you like the sort of genre that you would like to represent? And I said from the straight on, I would really like to get the idea of space, but it's a space opera, but combined with urban grittiness, something like, Blade Runner crossed with Mass Effect, that you get the idea of, the streets and urban grittiness, but then you can go up and you can see the ships and stars and planets and that sort of thing. And, I said to them, I would like to basically make it look like Gotham in space. And they did exactly that. At first saw it, I couldn't believe, wow, they actually got it right. And we went through a few variations of it. And we talked about it, everything from, the figure to, what sort of armor he'd be wearing, and much if he was standing to the cover or to the back, if his back was back to the cover, what the ships looked like, what the colors were, everything, even the font color, it all was under discussion. And I was really surprised how much input I got. Basically, I didn't do any of the actual drawing of it and I didn't pay for it, but insofar as I'm concerned, I actually helped make it. I had that much control over it. And I've heard, this is just my experience and other people will be able to have their input, but this is, I think, more common with UK publishers than US publishers, at least according to my agent. So, but in my case, I definitely had a lot of control over the UK cover.
Yeah, I think that's pretty unusual, that level of input. My publishers definitely listen to the kind of covers that I said I liked, and they let me send pictures of other books that I liked the style of, and they were very interested in what I had to say. But then I just got an email saying, yeah, we're going in a totally different direction. All right. It's kind of titles and covers, you can, generally speaking, Jeremy's experience is probably unusually involved. Generally speaking, you don't have control of any kind. I think you could definitely say if you hated it, and you can definitely give them ideas and things, but ultimately it's decision about marketing, and these people know their stuff. Like our job's to write the words, and it's a different skill set to know what the market wants and what sells and how you target a particular type of readers that you get and so on. Like I was really lucky with my covers. I loved them, but it wouldn't have been at all like when we were talking about concept originally for the city. So this is the US cover, which is a pencil drawing by Greg Ruth, and he's just a wonderful, amazing graphic artist. But like when we went from what the original design was to suddenly, oh no, actually we're going to go with like a single knife pencil drawn. I was like, what? Totally different from what I expected. But I mean, it turned out beautifully. And so this is like a good tale about how sometimes the things that you think that you want aren't necessarily what's right for the book. And you can be really pleasantly surprised on covers. But yeah, like it's generally speaking, especially debut authors don't have a lot of say in what your cover looks like. And while publishers are interested in your viewpoint, ultimately you're not going to have the decision about what it looks like. Usually. Jeremy seems to be an exception. Or Jeremy, sorry. There.
I was just going to ask though, about the whole input thing. Was that in your US or UK cover, like that you had? Got asked about the input.
Well, the US publisher had already done the cover before the UK bought rights to the book, so it was already kind of done in that sense. And then the UK looked at the cover and were like, we're actually going to go with something different for our market. And no, I had even less input probably in the UK cover. They just showed what they.
No, because I'm really interested in how different covers can appear for the same book over the pond. Like and it's always to do with marketing, obviously. But there are some covers that are almost identical, but there are others that are worlds apart. And you wonder what prompted that, and which is which one did the author get some hand in, and which
might be neither. Like US and UK markets are quite different in what. Like you see a lot more single image, like a single picture or symbol or whatever on UK covers, and a lot more like pictures of people and like faces and stuff on US ones, and it must just be a reflection of the market, what they like. Yeah,
because the UK covers of like Brandon Sanderson's are the Australian ones, like the very minimalist, like they've got white and then they've all got some sort of like different colored mist going through them, but they're very like clean, simple. But the US ones are like these big, epic style oil paintings, and this like classical fantasy. But the UK Australian ones like gives you the impression this is sort of like a Dishonored style world with like a minimalist, thing. But the US is this big, sprawling, traditional epic fantasy. But no, I find it really interesting the how each of them differ. And who they're catering
to. I think it honestly comes down to marketing. I've had input in all my covers, and I adore all my covers, so I'm like the worst person to ask. But they definitely came to us like the US and UK have two different covers. I could show them right here, but I'm lazy. For the UK.
Which one's the white? We want to see the covers firstly. Which one's the white one?
I'll explain this one. Yeah, so this is my UK one.
Okay, that's the one I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is my UK one. And with that one, they came with hey, we want to go with this style for this market. This is why we're going to put your main character on the cover, and we're going to do it in gray shading. They came out with me. That is what they wanted. I was like, great, that's awesome. And for this at least, the biggest part I had in this input was picking the color. And there was positions of the person. That was kind of my input on it, which was a great problem to have when all I got to do is pick a position for my person to be on in the color. So that was my input on it. And they're like, we want to do this? And I was like, yeah. And for this is my US one. And this one was actually a little interesting. So what they came with the US, they were like, hey, we want to do they wanted to be the eye-catching thing on the moon. And that was what he came as. He said, we're going to do this. We're going to make it the eye-popping thing. But there's a version of this cover that has people on it. It never made it to market. And I'm the only one, besides my editor and my agent, we're the only two people who have ever seen that image where there's people on it. And it was a
20 that I can slide to you.
Well, great. Damn it is. I'll hit you up later. But yeah, it's really comes down to marketing, and that image they have of people is wonderful. It's amazing, and I love it. It's actually my background to my computer right now. But looking at it from a marketing perspective, they were like, we want this to be this eye-catching image here, and we're going to do it this way. And they're flat out like, this is what we're going to do. And obviously, I adore my cover. Like, so them being like, oh, we're going to make this even just bigger. It's like, oh no, what a terrible problem to have. So I've gotten really lucky with my covers. But it really does come down to marketing. Like, I can input, like, I have a picture of my, like, what my sketch of my second cover book is going to look like for the US. And they allow me input. I was like, hey, we're doing like this thing. What do you think about this? And I'd be like, oh, that looks a little X. Can we do maybe a little Y instead? And my editor will be like, great, that's exactly what I thought. We'll do that. I'm going to go back to them. And you never know how much input you have. Like, I could be like, oh, I hate it, which I don't. But like, and my editor could be like, you're wrong. And I'll be like, okay, and go with it.
I'm so sorry.
Well, that's kind of what it seems like sometimes. And but like, they do know marketing. Like, marketing, I think, is like the great thing us writers kind of have an idea on. The marketing department can swoop in and be like, no, we're doing it this way, and everyone kind of goes along with it. But they do know marketing really well. Like, the people, like, they design covers for a specific reason. I've heard someone go on for like 2 hours about why color choice matters in covers, and it's insane. Where like I have someone dissect like what red, blue, and green all mean in covers, and why they're important and why they're different. And it's fascinating to hear. At the same time, you're like, am I just being like hypnotized by every book cover I look at?
Yes.
Yeah, but
that's
like,
what I intend to do.
yeah, exactly. It's pretty much like they know their job so well that we kind of have images in our head about what we want them to be. And they could be awesome, but like, they know better than us at the end of the day, kind of. Sometimes they're wrong.
Sometimes. There's a really good question in the comments. Someone asked, is the UK covers include Australia and other Commonwealth nations? And in my experience, and as far as I know, yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah, usually
We
they
get the
buy
UK
UK Commonwealth rights, and it's one bundle, so the same publisher makes the decision for the cover in that region. That's certainly the case for mine. Mine are the Australian and New Zealand covers are the same as the UK ones. But it does obviously depend on how you bundle your rights when you're selling them. So if you were in Australia and you sold your rights here first for Australia and then sold them overseas, which I understand is a harder thing to do, you might have an Australian publisher with a different cover, and then the new publishers will do it. Like, it will also depend. You either buy, you might buy rights directly off the author, or you might have a primary publisher who buys world rights and then they subsell rights. So that kind of will factor in as well as to how much input the other publishers have. So my like my Czech covers, hang on, I've got one up there. So this is my Czech version. So they like use the US art, but they sort of bought rights in the same way that the UK did. So like, it does depend on what the publisher wants to do and how close to release it is when they buy the rights. So they might just buy it and be like, okay, we also want to buy the cover art because then we can just put the whole thing out nice and quick. But yeah, good question.
Yeah, because I've noticed several authors, maybe a year or several, maybe even several months or a couple of years after they've sold, say the UK, the US, and all the other, the 2 different covers, and then they get like Polish rights or Russian rights or German rights or anything, and all the covers are completely different. Completely different artists. Sometimes you don't even recognize it because sometimes they take like really weird roads to get their message across for their readership. But yeah, typically with those that aren't, I guess, English speaking nations, I have no clue. I'm not in publishing. So, but they typically will take a little bit longer to do it, and they'll have their own covers for books in those countries. At least that's from my experience.
Yeah, there's some countries that just stick with the same ones. Like I lived in Thailand for a little bit, and their covers are pretty much all the same for US, the almost always UK covers. That's just my experience. But like I spent a lot of time in Poland, and there's the covers are completely different. Like I've never seen a single cover that's the same in Poland. Like it's completely and utterly different. And like honestly, Czech Republic does a lot of the same things. So Sans cover being the same as the US, the UK. That's a rarity as far as I know. But yeah, that was just my experience.
Yeah. So, and Devin, I want to get your feedback too, because you had some fantastic indie covers when your books came out, and now they're all being redone. I mean, was that just the publisher going, we're going to do no covers, or did they just, I guess, would they have had to get the rights, I assume, for the other covers if they had done that, or were they even considering using your indie pub covers?
No, they never considered using it. When I got the initial offer, it came with the understanding that they would be repackaged, which my agent explained to me was, they wanted to do covers for them. So it was just never something that we even talked about or argued. And I assume there's a whole load of legal stuff that I don't understand. But I also think they wanted to differentiate them so that it would be kind of really clearly different. Yeah. Which is why the covers are really very, very different. They went, while they have a similar kind of, I guess, feel, and they both have horses on them. Hang on, I'm not actually sure if I've got a copy of the original one. Hold on.
I was going to say, I've got it behind me.
All right, that's what it used to look like in the indie version. And then they went and did this. So, we've still got the horses and stuff on here. But this is an etched drawing, and, they put in a lot of the bright colors and everything. So it's really, they very deliberately, the art director said to me, they very deliberately went super different on that to make it different. But yeah, it was never a conversation. But I didn't get much input either. It was so this is the artist that we've chosen to do your covers. What do you think? So it's go and look at the other stuff they've done, and it's really amazing. Okay, cool. All right, no problem. And then I get the sketches and the sketch, and it's okay, this is what we're thinking of going. What do you think? And so there's always a what do you think, and I can kind of have an opinion, but it also kind of feels just like a tick box, that it's they care, but they also don't care, this is the direction that they've already decided that they wanted to go. And so I didn't get a say in, the colors or the layout, the anything at all. It was just, so I got, the artist, the sketch, the kind of finished mock-up of what they wanted it to look like afterwards. We made, super tiny changes to the fact that I think in one of them, his hand looks really ginormous, it's the size of the horse's head. So those kind of little changes,
like the horse landed on it.
But I really didn't get a say. This doesn't really bother me though, because I like the covers a lot. I trust the art department to know better than me, and I'm actually super non-visual, so I hate it when they ask me for stuff. They ask me I got an email recently that was okay, so we're just starting on the cover for book 3. Do you just have any ideas? Put forward any thoughts of we decided which character was sort of going to be depicted on what kind of stuff happens with them in the book, I guess. I just kind of threw out a couple of things, and then I got another one back saying, okay, but what do they look like? And I'm like, 8? I don't know. So I'm not one of those authors who keep a list of what all their characters physically look like, or have mood boards and stuff. I don't visualize. I don't have a visual imagination without it hurting my brain to do. So whenever they ask, I'm just really no. So I'm very happy to leave it to them to do.
I gotcha. Now, Scott, as somebody who doesn't have cover art yet, have they asked your opinion?
Yeah. So, I mean, they asked me to put together like, Jen, my editor, asked me to put together, a document, an inspiration document, or whatever kids call it these days, of like, hey, what do you think thematically it should look like, and what should it maybe focus on? And I, put in a few pictures and gave my opinion, but it hasn't gotten to the point where I would assume, I would hope they don't have even an artist, and so I don't think we're far enough for me to even know whether I'm going to have any input at all. But I'm just expecting not to, and kind of letting it go, because like Devin, I am the worst visual artist in the entire world.
What's going to happen
how
is
common it
Scott's
is,
just
right?
going to have a
Authors
yellow
cannot have
cover.
strong pictures.
I mean, like Pictionary, I can't play it to save my life.
All right. So kind of the last question I wanted to ask. So being traditionally published, and I mean, it kind of feeds into how we're living right now, especially over the past few months. How much self-publicity do you do versus how much do you get or expect from your publisher?
All right, I'm gonna start this one. This is gonna be great.
You go for it.
I got this one. So my book came out, like I said, 9 days ago in the UK. My US version got delayed. The worst known secret in the world is it's currently out in the US in ebook and audio. But because of all the stuff that happened with the virus, my US publisher was like, we're treating your June 23rd when the hardcover's out as your debut. We're not really going to put you on social media much until it gets closer. And we're going to let the UK take it over, because the UK was still sticking to that May 7th date because they weren't having issues with things. So it was a wonderful time being like between two worlds, where like it's coming out, it's out technically in the US and it's there, but my publisher actually isn't treating it like it's out. But the UK is like, oh, it's out. No, it's out. It's like they're waving their hands up in the air. It's out. And it's really odd. Like, I don't know how much, like, for a long time, if you'd gone to Glance's Twitter page, they posted something every day about my book. And it's hard to know how much of that was actually based on what the virus was happening and how much that was actually going to happen otherwise, because marketing changed so much in the past few months that everyone was kind of like, do we do this? Do we do this? Do we do this? And no one really knew what was going on. Like, back in like February, you could have been like, oh, it's going to be over in April. And clearly it's not. So for my book, at least, I became like, all right, I just got to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep talking about it until people get sick of my cover photos and want to like throw things at or unfollow me on Twitter. Like, because that's all I had. That's all I could do. It's not like I can go out to a local bookstore and be like, hey, buy my book. Here's a copy of it. And I was lucky enough that like I have connections from like a comic book store I used to frequent for years and years and years, that when I said, hey, my book's coming out, he was like, oh, I'm already a partner with Simon Schuster. I'll order like many versions of your book to sell to my customers. So I'm like, great. But like, other than that, like I couldn't do anything else. It was kind of like just social media. And it's hard to tell how much social media helps with a book's release and how much it's kind of just like yelling into a void or to other authors. And like other authors are like, if they want your book, they may have it already, or like they're already supporting you. So it's weird. Like, how do you engage new readers when like you're kind of yelling towards like your friends? And that's a very long-winded explanation. And I have no idea what's going on with my book. I get updates from my agent being like, you're blank now. And I'm like, great. What does that mean? And he'll respond like, we have no idea right now. Like, I know how many copies I sold, at least I think I do, in the US. And I asked my agent, like, is that good? And he's just like, oh, yeah, I have no idea. And this is someone who's been in the industry for like 30 years. He's like, this is a great guess as good. This is biggest guess as it is mine. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And that was a very long rant. And I'm going to stop talking because I really have no idea. It's a wonderful time.
No, but you're kind of right about social media, though. Yeah, because I mean, you're kind of. I think Jonathan French put it earlier that you're yelling into a hurricane. you have no idea where your words are going to land. Yeah. And if they do land, they could just still be spinning, up in the air. But I mean, it's hard to base it when you don't have physical books and you're handing it to people at signings or something, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read it." I mean, you can have all the likes on Twitter you want. It doesn't mean somebody's going to buy your book. They could just be like, "Cool, the book looked cool, fantastic. On to the next thing." Because that's just kind of what Twitter's, and unfortunately that's how Instagram is too. People just scroll through it and just like something, and they don't read anything. They just like it because that's a cool photo, and keep going. And you can't count that as a I guess a touch, or I don't know what the actual term for it is. I was in marketing in college, but I don't remember any of those years. So, but yeah, anybody else have some input? Jeremy might.
Look, I mean, there's only so much you can know, and like for traditionally published books, a lot of the time people are following that path because the sales and marketing stuff is just way outside their wheelhouse. And it's certainly in my case, I don't know how to do any of the things other than write the books. So as far as I can tell, in terms of social media, a lot of the time you can't control what people are doing. As you say, you don't know whether people who are following you on Twitter and interacting with you are actually going to read your book or not. My policy is always just to kind of be there and be available and do the things that I enjoy doing. So I hang out on Twitter too much because I like Twitter. I post pictures of my dogs and things that I bake on Instagram because I think my dogs are cute and I am proud of myself when I bake croissants. I just view it as if you're yourself or the best version of yourself online, you're doing what you can and you can't really control much more than that. Be pleasant and friendly and a nice presence on these social media sites and available to readers if they want to ask you stuff. But you're not going to move masses of books through Twitter campaigns or anything. All you can do is kind of build up a reputation for being a decent human. And you don't know what the ripple effects of that are. You don't know. Like I buy almost all my books through recommendations of people, and largely people who I'm friends with on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, and these various groups. And you can't measure that. Like you can't measure that I respect Devin's taste. So if she tells me a book is good, I will go out and buy it. That's not something that marketing can record, and so you don't know. So all you can do is just not be an asshole and hope for the best.
Cool night.
That's
don't be an
asshole.
Good advice.
That's really the best advice.
That's my general advice for social media handling. Is like, don't be an asshole. Even if you are secretly an asshole, don't be like a visible asshole. Hide your assholery in a package of pleasantness. Because ultimately, like pretending to be a decent human, for the people you interact with, it's almost as good. Like, even if you're secretly not liking them, like, if you're pleasant to people, even if inside you're a monster, then you're doing 90% of the work anyway. So
is this a confession?
I'm not saying I'm a monster.
She's very sweet.
But no, like honestly, just don't be an ass. Don't be an ass in your publishing career with the people you work with. Don't be an ass to other writers. Don't be an ass to fans, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. I think that kind of channels what you were saying, into when you're on social media, is to remember that a rising tide raises all boats, and that you are in an industry with other people, with other human beings, and that if you want to go anywhere, you have to do your part in a community, and be nice to your colleagues, don't be an asshole to them, support other writers, support other people, talk about other books that aren't your own, try and get the word out about, just give the impression that you're part of a community, because you are. And if you are just talking shop about your own books 24/7, people will notice. Sure, you'll get one or two extra readers, maybe, but other people will notice, and and that's not really something that you want to do for yourself if you're just tooting your own horn 24/7. And and what's really the point, if you're not in this industry, to be part of a community and get more get books out there and get them read and get good quality stuff out there and do great work. Why are you in this industry? Yeah, I mean, we're all if things are stacked against us as hard enough as they are, even in traditional publishing, it's hard to go anywhere. So, making things even more difficult for yourself by pretending to go solo and going out for number one is, it's not, you're not helping anyone and you're not fooling anyone either. And so, yeah, just, try and, be part of a community, try and, uplift other writers, engage in conversations, just be out there, like what Sam says. And yeah, that sort of thing. I do think that social media has a big input in your sales, and being able to, be known by other writers and bloggers and authors and reviewers definitely helps push the needle along. And it's important to really remember what you do say has consequences. And because, all of us, I'm sure, had stupid stuff that we said 10 years ago. And you can't really say the same things now because, for better or worse, you are, quote unquote, a public figure. So, if you say something stupid at a panel and someone quotes you on that, you've got to, and people will remember, for better or worse. So, yeah, it's just always good to keep in mind that you're not alone, and it's, nothing exists in a vacuum, and to always, support, other writers. I mean, obviously no one's going to care about your book as much as you will ever. I mean, that's natural, but just remember that you're part of a community, and just try to play by ear.
Except for your mom, unless you're Devin's mom, who cares about Sam's book more?
Devin's mom is the best. We love Devin's mom.
I would kind of, and before we get to everybody else's response, I would kind of say the same thing about the book reviewing community. There are a lot of people that pimp their own stuff, and that's great. But there are a ton of people that just continuously share everybody else's stuff, whether, it's book reviews or somebody's got a new channel up or something. There's always a big group of people that are just pushing and pushing and pushing, going, oh my gosh, this is a great review. I'm going to read this book now. And that gets those, their followers going, oh, I need to check that out too. But, if you just continuously toot your own horn, you're going to turn a lot of people off. And not to say that self-promoting your own book is bad, but when you've got a book coming out, that's what you have to do. But it's not just that all the time and just pressing it. Because I've seen several authors, like on, especially earlier on when I was doing early book reviews and beta reads and stuff. I mean, every post was like about their book, and it maybe had been out for weeks or months or even a year. And I was like, I think you've beaten that horse enough. Maybe try to make friends, and they can talk about your book while you talk about theirs. And it's just something, you kind of just have to, I don't know if it's, you have to know it, but you have to know that, people are out for more than just you. However depressing that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, my big thing is, like, I'm nobody, right? Like, I don't even have books out yet, so don't listen to me.
You're about to, it's fine.
But yeah, thank you. But I mean, like, I hear a lot of people talk about, like, oh, you should cultivate your social media presence, and you should do this, you should do that. I'm like, even if that got me extra readers, like, I'm not about to spend the majority of my life, because let's be honest, the majority of my life is spent on Twitter these days. I'm not about to spend the majority of my life being a fabricated person, Like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to try to genuinely not be an asshole. But other than that, like, man, I'm so much more likely to buy a book from somebody who's authentic and a cool person, and gets a good recommendation from somebody else, than I am somebody who's like super funny on Twitter or whatever. That's just my 2 cents, right? Like, so you'll probably see that backfire awfully when my books are out, because I don't do a whole lot to ramp up audience or what have you. But man, that just kind of strikes me the wrong way. Like, oh, cultivate your platform. Ooh, it just makes me feel gross.
Corporate speak 101.
I'll be honest, I'm completely with you. Like, I am not a social media person. Like, before I decided I was going to be a writer, you had a hard time finding me on any social media because I didn't have them. Like, I was one of the person you had to like text to find out. You'd be like, where did Nick go? Be like, oh, 6 months later, oh, he's in France. You're like, oh, okay. Like that was how people had to get in contact with me. Like I was not on social media. And like this whole like once you get into like publishing, it's like you have to be on social media. Or like it feels like you do at least, because like that's where you see people are talking and interacting, and like that's where you think books are being sold. So there's an initial thing like you have to be there, or else you're gonna miss out on a lot. And like whenever I have those feelings, I'm like I have to be on here, I'm always like I'm not enjoying it. But when I come on and be like, I'm gonna like joke around about this stupid thing, or like try to make fun of Jeremy when he's not looking, it's way more fun. Like when you have genuine interactions with things, like it becomes more fun rather than just being like, oh, this is a brand, I have to keep maintaining my brand.
Yeah, and I should say, when I said be like a nicer version of yourself, I don't mean make a fake person. I'm a full believer in, I just mean don't be an ass, even if you're
Oh, totally.
There's this revolving idea in Salem
there's this idea that you have to be on social media or whatever, and it's largely untrue. Like, I'm not saying social media doesn't move books, because it obviously does, and you, as I said before, you can't know the ripple effect of making friends and being part of it. But also, the vast majority of readers still really aren't sitting there on Twitter interacting with authors. So it can feel like that's where everybody is, but it's not. It's not really true. And so most of the time, you don't really have access to the vast majority of people who are selling books. So it's something you do if you enjoy it, and only to the extent that you enjoy it. There's no point being on Twitter if you're hating every second, because it'll come across that you're hating every second, and it's a waste of your time. Like, dude, most of us have like day jobs and kids and pets and stuff. You can't spend the time that you could be spending writing doing something that you hate just because you think that that's part of the gig. Because I genuinely don't think it is part of the gig if you're not enjoying it. You'll be bad at it if you don't enjoy it. So like, pick the platforms that you are good at because you enjoy them and you like spending time there. Like, you like taking pictures. If I like taking pictures of my dog, I'll post them on Insta. But I'm not going to sit on Insta trying to crack the hashtags and the whatever the code is for getting lots of followers on there. It's just not something I'm interested in. So it's not something I'm going to do because I'm going to be bad at it. And there's so many different ways that you can be online. You can't be on top of all of them, or you wouldn't have time to write books. So yeah, my advice, particularly in hanging out in your debut year, is like, do only the things that you enjoy doing, and like be careful that you don't enjoy them too much and spend all of your time doing them. But yeah, like, just have fun, and if you're not having fun, don't think that you have to do it as a marketing exercise, because ultimately you don't, and it won't work. That's my theory.
Anybody else have any last second thoughts on that, or have we beaten that horse? I mean, just a bloody pulp at this point. Everybody good? Everybody's quiet, so I assume so.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna go and let everybody have an opportunity to pimp their latest book or upcoming book. Scott can pimp his entire trilogy if he wants to. So Nick, we'll start with you.
All right. This is my book. This is the pretty US cover. It's called King of Liars. This version comes out June 23rd by Saga Press. Look, you're either gonna love or hate my main character. There's really no in between at this point. And if you hate it, it looks really good when you throw it across the room. That's all I really got.
Wow. Everybody go out and buy it now. I mean, you have incentive.
I don't know what else to say.
All right, Jeremy.
All right, this is my book. This is my pretty cover. I don't actually have an art yet. This is all I have. Yeah, you get that?
There you go.
Yeah.
No.
This is the only copy I have. So if you do chuck it across the room, it hurts. Yeah, it's about, DNA of extinct aliens that makes people addicted to adrenaline and aggression. So obviously, absolutely nothing wrong could go with that. It's about brotherhood, it's about family, it's about doing right by the people you love. But if you're not into that, it's also about, it's got alien drug dealers, aliens who are addicted to drugs. It's got spaceships, it's got cities in an asteroid, weird space cults, all the good stuff. We pitched it as Blade Runner 2049 meets Mass Effect 2. So if you're into that, this is might be your thing. It comes out in 18 days, and I am not worried about that at all. It is the first of a trilogy, so please buy it. You don't have to read it. You don't have. Actually, I'm perfectly fine with you not reading it. But just buy it. There's a lot of, it's very visceral. There's a lot of gross stuff in it. I think there was someone on Twitter, Goodreads, who said that the story is like an ice pick to the face in the best possible way. And it made the skin crawl in the best possible way. So, if that's your thing, go for it. Yeah, but that's me. And so this is my glorious book. They don't like me enough to give me arcs. I chained the wrong people in my basement.
Oh gosh. All right, Sam, your turn.
Oh, my turn. Sorry. I already showed you my covers. That's City of Lies. It's been out for a while. I would love it if you also bought it. That would be grand. Hollow Empire is the sequel. It's coming out in December. Pre-orders are just the best possible people do pre-orders. Like, it just really says something excellent about your character if you pre-order that book or several copies of that book. That's what really is on the town. I know. You might like my books if you kind of like it's sort of a murder mystery and intrigue and politics in a city under siege, basically. So probably low on the low magic side and kind of a slow burn tension sort of story rather than a big dragon battle kind of epic fantasy. But yeah, I'm quite fond of it. And I would like to continue writing for a living if possible. So for that reason, tell all your friends and family.
For what it's worth, I usually don't like slow burn fantasies, and I really, really enjoyed it. So there you have it.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you.
You just
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have books out. I don't have books out soon. Even it's going to be a year. All I've got's a few of these. So go buy all their books, I suppose. But a quick pitch.
Scott,
for
thank
those
you so much
who-
for being here.
Yeah, there you go.
Can we pre-order your book, Scott?
No. They're not even on Goodreads.
You can't do anything. It doesn't exist.
Nope.
Why are you even here?
Yeah,
I just send you
I
some
just
good
like-
vibes from around the
people
world.
people said hang out with authors, drink a little bit. I just showed up.
Scott's like, I'm an author. How about it? No, what were you gonna say, Scott? You said you were gonna say something.
Oh yeah, just a quick pitch for people that can remember things and people for more than 1 year, which would not be me, but maybe there's some out there. I'm a simple man. I write, what I like, which is action, adventure, fantasy. My magic/tech system is modified electromagnetism, which I thought was fun. I come from an engineering background a decade or so ago. So, yeah. That's what I write. You'll see it in a year or so.
All right, Devin.
Okay, well, this is Rewrite the Storm. It's out on June 23rd in the US and June 25th in the UK. It is the story of an empire that was built on war being destroyed beneath war and years of division and totally not communicating. We follow there's a snarky assassin with a voice in her head she can't make go away, a honorable warrior who's been forced to fight a war not of his making, and an ambitious princess who wants to be the empress in her own right, whatever the cost, and it's a mess. Lots of intrigue, lots of battles.
It's really good.
Some weird tricksy necromancy, soul magic. It's there.
Fantastic. Well, everybody, I know it's late for a couple, or I guess not really late, but somewhat late for a couple of us, and early for everybody else. But just want to thank all of y'all for coming on. I think it's been a fantastic chat for about an hour and 45 minutes. I think I can safely say that everybody is surviving or has survived their debut because everybody's still here. So And Scott will survive his when it gets here. And so will Jeremy in 18 days. But just really, I really appreciate you guys and ladies would be willing to participate in this. I know it's like a month whirlwind getting this all done, but it's been great seeing you all, chatting with you all, even though I've had an opportunity to chat with some of you before, and just again, thanks for everything, and thank everybody for tuning in. That's had a chance to tune in, and again, this will be going on the YouTube channel at some point. I think they're slowly uploading to my channel. I just saw the first panel load. So 14 hours apparently is the time it takes for it to actually load to my main channel. So I guess my job is done.
Thank you so much, David. For all
absolutely. So my plan, so my plan is to just like post one thing tomorrow, and just everybody can just kind of like share it, so everybody that didn't get a chance to see it live will see it tomorrow. So, but just again, thank y'all. It was awesome. So. I'm gonna go ahead and end there, so Jeremy can come to his reading, because I know he's been looking forward to reading off of his many pages.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Fantastic. But everybody else, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe, and maybe we'll try to do this again at some point if we're still kind of in the same living arrangements. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
See you guys.